They laughed before they finished the sentence. Two generations can't share the screen. The words landed hard in the room, but neither man reacted. Dwayne Johnson didn't shift in his chair. John Rambo didn't blink. That's when the producer realized something was wrong. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a mistake. The producer tried to recover, smiling like this was all theoretical. Audiences don't want to see the past standing next to the present, he said. It confuses the brand. Dwayne finally looked up. Calm, focused, dangerous in the quiet way. Or, he said, it reminds them where the present came from. The room went still, but the real tension wasn't in the words, it was in the contrast. On one side of the table, Hollywood logic, algorithms, demographics, fear. On the other, two men built by pressure, not opinion. John Rambo leaned forward slightly. The chair creaked. That sound alone silenced the room. You think strength expires? He asked. His voice was low. Flat, not angry. No one answered, because the truth was uncomfortable. They weren't afraid the movie would fail, they were afraid it wouldn't. Afraid that seeing raw, earned resilience next to modern dominance would expose something Hollywood didn't want exposed, that legends don't disappear, they wait. The producer cleared his throat. We're just saying one of you would overshadow the other. Dwayne smiled. Not friendly, that's the point. And here's what no one in that room understood yet. This wasn't about a film. It was about whether Hollywood still had room for truth, or only room for what it could control. Because when two generations stand side by side, you don't see conflict. You see lineage. And in the next few minutes, that lineage was about to scare the hell out of everyone. The producer tried to regain the room. That's not what we meant, he said quickly. This is about balance. Marketing. Risk. John Rambo tilted his head slightly. Risk, he repeated. That single word changed the temperature. Rambo didn't raise his voice. He never did. He didn't need to. His presence carried the memory of jungles, mud, blood, and silence, places where risk wasn't theoretical. Dwayne watched the producer closely now, not aggressively, precisely. Like he was waiting for the real truth to slip out. You're worried one of us won't matter, Dwayne said. Be honest. The producer hesitated. Too long. That was the answer. Another executive jumped in. Audiences want something fresh. Forward-looking, not nostalgia. Rambo smiled for the first time. It wasn't warm. You think I'm nostalgia, he said. Funny. I never stopped surviving. Rehook hit hard. Because suddenly this wasn't about age. It was about relevance. Dwayne leaned forward. Elbows on the table. Calm voice. No performance. You don't want two generations on screen, he said. Because one proves the other isn't replaceable. Silence again. This time heavier. Hollywood loved reinvention, as long as it erased what came before it. Loved youth, as long as it forgot endurance. But endurance sitting next to evolution, that was dangerous. Another rehook. The producer swallowed. Even if we agreed, he said, the dynamic wouldn't work. One of you would have to lose. Rambo's eyes met Dwayne's. No rivalry, no ego, understanding. That's where you're wrong, Dwayne said. Nobody loses. Rambo nodded once. When pressure hits, Rambo added, you don't ask who's newer. You ask who's still standing. The executives exchanged looks. This meeting had gone off script. Way off. They weren't managing talent anymore. They were facing something older than the industry itself, continuity. And that's when the producer made the mistake that would end the argument entirely. He laughed. Just a little. Let's be realistic, he said. What does this movie even look like? Rehook. Because in that moment, Dwayne and Rambo didn't answer with words. They stood up, together. And the room finally understood what sharing the screen would actually mean. Chairs scraped against the floor. That sound landed harder than any argument. Dwayne Johnson rose first. Slow. Controlled. No rush. Then John Rambo stood beside him, same timing, different weight. The room felt smaller instantly. Not because they were big. Because they were aligned. "This is what it looks like," Dwayne said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pitch the movie. He didn't sell anything. He just stood there. Rambo adjusted the strap of his worn jacket, eyes locked on the producer who had laughed. "You think stories belong to eras," he said. "They belong to consequences." Rehook. The executives shifted in their seats. One of them reached for a pen, then stopped. Another glanced at the door, like escape was suddenly an option. "It's not about who's louder," Dwayne continued. "It's about who holds the frame." Hollywood language. Used against them. Rambo took a step forward. "Just one. Every war looks different," he said. "But the men who walk out alive. They all recognize each other." Silence. The producer tried again. "Audiences won't understand this dynamic." Dwayne shook his head. "They understand pressure. Loss. Survival. They understand what happens when experience meets momentum." Another rehook. Because now the room wasn't imagining a movie. They were imagining a confrontation. Two men. Two philosophies. Not fighting each other, but everything around them. One executive finally spoke up, quieter now. "So what are you saying this film is?" Dwayne didn't answer immediately. He looked at Rambo. Rambo nodded once. "It's about what happens," Dwayne said, "when the past doesn't step aside, and the present doesn't back down." The producer swallowed. He finally understood the problem. This wasn't a casting decision. It was a statement. And statements can't be controlled once they're seen. That's when the door at the back of the room opened. Another executive entered, late, holding a tablet. "Sorry," he said. "I just saw the side-by-side test footage marketing pulled." Everyone turned. He looked up, confused by the tension. "You might want to see this." Rehook landed. Because whatever was on that screen was about to make the argument irrelevant, the tablet hit the table. No build-up. No explanation. The executive tapped the screen and turned it toward them. Split frame. Left side, Dwayne Johnson walking into a dimly lit room. Right side, John Rambo doing the same. No dialogue. No music. Just presence. The room reacted before anyone spoke. Something about the contrast worked too well. Modern force and hardened survival didn't clash, they locked in. Like two different answers to the same problem. The producer frowned. "That's just a test." Dwayne didn't look away from the screen. "So is every audience." Rambo crossed his arms. "Truth doesn't need polish." Rehook. The executive with the tablet swallowed. Marketing ran engagement simulations. The response curve spikes when you're together. Not separately. Silence. Not disbelief. Calculation. Hollywood understood numbers better than courage. "So what's the story?" the producer asked quietly now. Different tone. Defensive. Dwayne answered without hesitation. "Pressure." Rambo nodded. "And what it does to men who don't break." The producer leaned back. He finally saw it. Not a passing of the torch story. Not mentor and student. Two forces. Same enemy. "This isn't nostalgia," he admitted. "It's confrontation." Rambo's eyes didn't soften. "Good. Because confrontation was the point." The executive exhaled. "If we do this, it changes expectations." Dwayne met his gaze. "That's why you should." Another rehook. Because the question was no longer can two generations share the screen. It was whether Hollywood could survive watching them do it. The producer rubbed his face. Tired now. Exposed. There's one problem, he said. If we move forward, one of you has to lose. Audiences expect that. Rambo shook his head. Slow. Certain. That's your mistake, he said. You think strength needs a winner. Dwayne stepped closer to the table. Not aggressive. Intentional. This story isn't about beating each other, he said. It's about what happens when pressure comes from outside, and neither of us steps aside. Rehook. The executives exchanged looks. This wasn't a formula they recognized. No hero replacing the old guard. No clean arc. That's risky, someone muttered. Rambo leaned in. So is lying to people who know better. Silence again. Hollywood liked conflict when it could be resolved. This wasn't resolution. This was coexistence. And that scared them more. Another executive finally asked, so no one loses? Dwayne answered calmly. The lie does. That landed. Because suddenly the room understood, this film wasn't asking permission. It was challenging a habit. The producer exhaled slowly. If we greenlight this, expectations will change. Rambo's eyes stayed locked on him. Good. Because change was the only reason either of them was still standing. And that's when the producer said the words that sealed it. All right. Let's do it. The room didn't cheer. It didn't celebrate. It braced itself. Because everyone knew. Once cameras started rolling, there would be no taking this back. The first day of filming didn't feel historic. It felt tense. Crew members avoided eye contact. Conversations dropped when Dwayne and Rambo walked past each other. Not because of rivalry, because no one knew how this was supposed to work. Two leads. No hierarchy. Places, the assistant director called. The scene was simple. No dialogue. Just movement. Two men entering the same frame from opposite sides. Action. Dwayne stepped in first. Modern, controlled, composed. Rambo followed. Slower, heavier, every step carrying history. Something broke. The set went quiet in a way film sets never do. No shuffling. No whispers. No phones. They didn't look at each other. They didn't need to. The tension lived in the space between them. The director didn't cut. 10 seconds passed. Then 15. Finally, cut. No one moved. The director lowered his headset slowly. Do that again, he said. Exactly the same. Rehook. Because no one was watching characters anymore. They were watching gravity. After the third take, the cinematographer whispered, "This shouldn't work." The director didn't look away from the monitor. That's how you know it does. Dwayne caught Rambo's eye for the first time. Just a glance. Mutual recognition. Not competition. Confirmation. This wasn't a movie fighting for attention. It was a statement daring the audience to look away. And behind the monitors, the producer finally understood the truth he'd been avoiding. The screen didn't choose sides. It held them both. By the end of the week, the rumors had started. Not online. On set. Grip crews talked in low voices. Editors stayed late. Marketing people stopped calling it the project and started calling it the film. Because the camera was revealing something no one had planned. Dwayne brought momentum. Precision. Modern authority. Rambo brought consequence. Weight. The kind of silence earned, not performed. Together, they didn't compete. They framed each other. In one scene, Dwayne spoke, measured, controlled. Rambo didn't respond. He just looked at him. The director whispered, "Don't cut." That look did more than dialogue ever could. Rehook. After wrap, the producer pulled Dwayne aside. His voice was different now. Lower. "We didn't expect this balance," he admitted. Dwayne wiped sweat from his brow. "That's because you were looking for dominance." Rambo passed behind them, heading for his trailer. "You thought one of us would fade," Rambo said without stopping. "Turns out we sharpen each other." The producer watched him go. Shaken. Because the truth was undeniable now. This film wasn't dividing generations. It was exposing the lie that they were ever separate. And once that lie was gone, there was no going back. Not for the studio. Not for the audience. Not for Hollywood. Because when experience stands next to evolution, you don't see age. You see survival. The first footage wasn't supposed to leave the building. No trailer. No teaser. Just a 30-second clip shared internally. Someone leaked it anyway. By morning, phones were buzzing across the studio lot. No headlines yet. Just one sentence, repeated quietly. "You need to see this." The clip wasn't flashy. No explosions. No music. Just Dwayne and Rambo standing side by side in a narrow corridor, facing forward, breathing steady. 2 generations. 1 frame. The comments came fast. "This feels dangerous. Why does this work? I didn't know I needed this." Rehook. Marketing called an emergency meeting. Not to stop it. To understand it. "This isn't nostalgia," one analyst said, scrolling. "Younger audiences aren't confused. They're locked in." Another added, "Older audiences aren't resistant. They feel respected." The producer leaned back, silent. For the first time, the data didn't support Hollywood's fear. It destroyed it. On set that afternoon, the energy shifted. Crew members didn't avoid eye contact anymore. They watched. Closely. During a break, Dwayne sat on an equipment crate, stretching his shoulders. Rambo stood nearby, checking a prop knife. "You feel it?" Dwayne asked quietly. Rambo nodded. "Yeah. They stopped trying to place us." That was the danger Hollywood never planned for. Once audiences stopped choosing sides, they started asking for truth. And truth doesn't scale quietly. That night, the studio greenlit a full trailer. No test screenings. No safety net. Because whatever this film was becoming, it was already bigger than Control. The trailer dropped without warning. No countdown. No press tour. Just a link. Within an hour, the reaction was impossible to manage. Not outrage. Not confusion. Recognition. Clips spread faster than commentary. People didn't argue about who was better. They talked about how it felt. He doesn't replace him. He stands with him. This isn't passing the torch, it's refusing to drop it. Rehook. Studio phones lit up. Executives who had passed on the project suddenly wanted meetings. Urgent ones. The producer watched the numbers climb. Views. Retention. Replays. The metric Hollywood trusted most. This wasn't supposed to happen, someone whispered. On set, Dwayne watched the trailer once. Then turned the screen off. Rambo didn't watch it at all. "People see what they're ready to see," Rambo said. "The rest is noise." Dwayne nodded. Because he understood now, this film was no longer theirs. It belonged to the audience. And the audience wasn't asking for novelty. They were asking for honesty. That night, a studio exec sent one final message to the team. "We underestimated this. No apology. No explanation. Just admission. And in Hollywood, admission only comes when control is already gone. Because when two generations stand together and refuse to compete, the industry doesn't get to decide what works anymore. The audience does. When the film finally premiered, critics tried to explain it. They used words like unexpected, bold, unusual chemistry. They missed the point. This was never about chemistry. It was about refusal. Refusing to erase the past. Refusing to pretend the present arrived alone. Refusing to turn strength into a competition. Dwayne Johnson stood on one side of the stage. Calm. Grounded. Built by momentum. John Rambo stood on the other. Silent. Scarred. Built by survival. No speeches. No declarations. They didn't need them. Because the screen had already said everything. The audience didn't cheer louder for one than the other. They didn't choose sides. They didn't argue generations. They watched. And in that watching, Hollywood learned something it had spent decades trying to forget. Power doesn't expire. It evolves. Experience doesn't fade. It anchors. And when evolution stands next to endurance, the result isn't conflict. It's clarity. The lie was never that two generations couldn't share the screen. The lie was that one had to disappear for the other to matter. That night, the industry didn't lose control because the movie was successful. It lost control because the audience saw the truth. And once truth is seen, it doesn't go back into the box. That's what happened minutes after they said it couldn't work. Not a miracle. Not nostalgia. A reminder. Some stories don't belong to one era. They belong to everyone who's still standing.